At the Regal Cinemas lot, I saw my fiancé kissing another man, his hand on her waist, then lower. I waited until they went inside. Then I bought the seat right behind them. When they noticed me, I never thought a parking lot could smell like betrayal. But that Friday evening at Regal Cinemas, it did. Burnt popcorn, car exhaust, and something metallic in the air that hit the back of my throat when I saw her. Madeline, my fiancée, the woman who told me she was just grabbing a late movie with coworkers. I'd wrapped up work early that night. One of those lucky Fridays when code runs smoothly and traffic feels light. I'd even stopped by a florist on 4th Avenue and picked up her favorite flowers, yellow tulips. She'd had a rough week at her marketing job, or at least that's what she said, so I figured I'd surprise her after her girls' night. I knew the movie she mentioned, the time, the theater. I wasn't suspicious, just trying to be thoughtful. When I pulled into the lot, the evening felt calm. People were laughing, couples holding hands, kids running toward the arcade. And then, there she was, right under the orange glow of the Regal Cinemas sign. Not with coworkers, not with friends. With him. Tall, gray jacket, hand brushing her back as if he owned it. She leaned in close, said something I couldn't hear, and then she kissed him, slow, deliberate, like it wasn't the first time. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked. I remember every second of that silence. My heartbeat didn't race. It slowed. My breath got shallow, like I was underwater. I sat there, engine still running, and stared at the shape of her silhouette against his. And then I got out of the car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I walked across the asphalt, the bouquet still in my hand. Her laugh carried over the sound of the traffic, soft and familiar, until she turned and saw me. The color drained from her face so fast, it was almost impressive. The guy turned too, confusion flickering for a second, then arrogance replacing it. I could tell immediately the type he was, the kind who sees a ring and thinks it's a challenge. I stopped a few feet away, looked at her, then at him, and said the first thing that came to mind. I guess this is the after party. The man, later I'd learn his name was Troy Sandler, smirked, resting an arm casually on her car like he belonged there. Madeline's lips parted, but no sound came out. I think she expected me to shout, to make a scene. I didn't. I pulled the small box out of my pocket, flipped it open, and showed her the ring still sitting inside. The one she'd said she'd forgotten to wear because her fingers were swollen. People nearby started slowing down, pretending not to watch. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. She whispered something about, "It's not what it looks like," but Troy cut her off, laughing quietly. "Man, don't take it so seriously. She said you guys were basically done." That sentence snapped something in me. Not loud, not violent, just final. I placed the bouquet on the hood of her car, next to her keys that hung halfway out of her purse. Then I looked at him and said, "You should be careful speaking for people. Sometimes it costs more than you think." I walked away before either of them reacted. My footsteps echoed through the lot, slow and measured. It wasn't until I reached my car that I realized my hands were shaking. Not from sadness, from clarity. I sat inside, stared at my reflection in the mirror, and waited for something to hurt. But all I felt was an eerie kind of calm, like I was watching someone else's movie. Then came the first twist. As I was about to drive off, a man in a navy polo knocked on my window, the security guard. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd walked into something personal, but couldn't help himself. "Sir, sorry, I just wanted to say that guy you were talking to? He's not supposed to be here tonight. His wife came by earlier looking for him. Said she thought he was cheating." I stared at him for a second, then asked, "His wife?" The guard nodded. "Yeah, he's been here a few times. Always with different women." I didn't know she'd find out. It hit me then. Troy wasn't just some stranger. He was married. Madeline wasn't only lying to me. She was part of someone else's mess. I thanked the guard and drove off, the flowers still sitting on her hood. My mind wasn't racing with questions. I didn't need to know why. The why was irrelevant now. People cheat for the same reasons they lie, because they think they won't get caught. When I pulled into my driveway, her name started lighting up my phone. Texts stacked one after another. "Please let me explain. It's not like that. I swear I didn't mean for you to see. Please pick up." I tossed the phone on the passenger seat and sat there in the dark. The irony wasn't lost on me, that I'd just watched her walk into a theater to watch fiction while living one of her own. Then another text appeared, a new number. I opened it. "You deserve to know who he really is." Attached was a photo. Troy, the same gray jacket. But this time, he wasn't with Madeline. He was at a restaurant, his arm around a brunette woman holding a toddler. The message continued, "He's my husband. And you're not the first person he's done this to." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. The wife. The security guard hadn't been exaggerating. This was her. I didn't respond, but she kept sending images, receipts, screenshots, timestamps from that same Regal Cinemas. There was a note at the end. If you want to end this properly, we should talk. I leaned back in my seat, staring at the glow of my phone. My fiancé was cheating with a married man, and his wife had just handed me proof. The situation had flipped in less than an hour. What started as heartbreak was turning into opportunity. Before heading inside, I scrolled through my camera roll and deleted every photo of Madeline, not out of pain, but precision. I wanted no reminders, no weakness, no hesitation. Then, as I walked up to my door, my phone buzzed again. This time, a voice message from her. Her tone wasn't apologetic anymore. It was defensive, angry, desperate. She said I'd embarrassed her by confronting them in public, that I'd made a scene, that if I didn't stop, she'd make sure everyone knows how controlling I was. I listened to the whole thing without reacting. It was almost laughable. She was rewriting the story already, trying to flip the blame before it even stuck. That was the moment I decided this wouldn't end in shouting or tears. It would end in silence. Hers, specifically. Because if she thought the parking lot was humiliating, she hadn't seen what real exposure looked like yet. And I already knew where it would happen. The same place it started. The same theater. Regal Cinemas. Madeline showed up at my apartment the next morning before sunrise. I hadn't slept. The night had played on repeat in my head. The kiss, the smirk, the security guard's words. I heard her knocking before I saw her through the peephole, still wearing last night's coat. Hair messy, mascara streaked. She looked like someone who'd lost a fight she started. When I opened the door, she threw her arms around me before I could speak. Her body trembled against mine, but it wasn't guilt, it was fear. Fear of losing her comfort, her image, her safety net. She kept saying she'd made a mistake, that she'd had too much to drink, that it was just a kiss. I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen, made coffee, and let her talk. Then her phone rang. The sound cut through her voice like a blade. She froze, eyes flicking toward it on the counter. The name that flashed on the screen wasn't Troy. It was Erica. I didn't need to ask. I picked up the phone and hit speaker. Troy's voice filled the kitchen, lazy and unbothered, like he'd woken up next to someone else's chaos. He asked if she'd told me yet, then laughed when there was silence. That was all I needed. I hung up and dropped the phone into her untouched cup of coffee. The splash stained her sleeve brown. Her apology turned sharp, fast. She accused me of invading her privacy, of embarrassing her. Then, like a true manipulator cornered, she cried again. She said Troy was her boss, that it wasn't serious, that he'd pressured her, that she wanted to end it, but didn't know how. I didn't call her a liar. I didn't call her anything. I just told her to leave. She stood there, silent, realizing I wasn't going to beg, shout, or forgive. That scared her more than rage ever could. When the door closed, I checked my phone again. The anonymous message from last night was still there. The wife, or whoever she was, had sent her name at the end, Elena Sandler. She wanted to meet, somewhere public. That afternoon, I drove to the small coffee shop near the pier she mentioned. She was already there, sitting by the window, sunglasses on even indoors. Mid-30s, sharp posture, the kind of calm you only get after surviving something painful for too long. She didn't waste time. She slid a flash drive across the table, said it contained proof of her husband's pattern, emails, travel receipts, hotel records. Troy has been doing this for years, she said flatly. He preys on women he supervises. Your fiancé isn't the first, and won't be the last unless someone stops him. I asked why she was helping me. She smiled without humor. Because no one believes a woman until there's a man with her story. We talked for an hour. Every word built a clearer picture. Troy wasn't just cheating. He was strategic, manipulative, a predator who blurred lines at work and used his charm like a tool. When I asked how many there were, she said, 5. That I know of. Madeline was number 5. Elena wasn't bitter, just efficient. She wanted him exposed properly. HR, board members, clients. Not gossip, but consequences. She'd already filed complaints, but his position protected him. She said if I wanted revenge, I didn't need to break the law. I just had to let the truth out in the right place. That idea grew in my head like wildfire. After I left, I drove aimlessly. Every red light looked like a countdown. I wasn't thinking about heartbreak anymore. I was thinking about symmetry. How things start where they end. That night, Madeline texted again, long paragraphs filled with apologies and self-justifications. I didn't reply, but I saved every message. I wanted a record, not because I needed closure, but because she needed a mirror. Later that week, I received another message, not from her, but from one of her coworkers. A woman named Dana, who said she'd seen Madeline crying in the office bathroom and thought I deserved to know what's being said. Apparently, Madeline told everyone that I had been controlling, that I'd made her cheat by being distant. She said I'd lost my temper at the theater and threatened Troy. The lies spread faster than the truth could crawl. That was when I decided to end it publicly. Quiet revenge only satisfies the heart. Public truth breaks the image they hide behind. I called Elena again. We met at a park this time. I told her I wanted to help her expose Troy, but I wanted to do it in a way that would also end Madeline's act. She listened, expression unreadable, then nodded slowly. She said she had recordings from Troy's work phone, him bragging about his conquests. One of them was about the engaged one. That alone could ruin both his career and her reputation at the same time. We started planning. I didn't want to leak things online or go to HR myself. That would look vengeful. I wanted something cleaner, a single, undeniable moment. So I rented the same theater where it all started. Regal Cinemas. The manager was an old acquaintance from college. I told him it was for a private engagement event. Paid in cash. No names on the reservation. Then I sent Madeline a message that night. We need to talk. I want to try to fix this. Friday, 7 p.m. Regal. Same place we met. Her reply came in seconds. Yes. Thank you. You won't regret it. She probably thought I'd finally broken down, that I was ready to forgive, that she could talk her way out again. But I wasn't bringing apologies. I was bringing receipts. That Friday morning, before anything else, Elena called me. Her voice was calm, steady, almost satisfied. She said, I've got something new. You'll want to use it. She sent me a file. It was Troy's voice, laughing with someone on speaker. I recognized Madeline's laugh in the background. He was mocking me. She thinks he'll take her back, Troy said. It's funny how desperate they get when they realize we never promised anything. Hearing it didn't hurt. It focused me. That night, as I got ready, I noticed I felt strangely calm. Like before a performance where I already knew every line. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was exact. At 6:59, I pulled into the same parking lot where everything had broken 2 weeks before. The smell was the same. Popcorn, exhaust, cheap perfume from the crowd drifting by. The theater's neon lights painted the pavement in red and orange. She arrived right on time, dressed like she was going on a first date. Her makeup was flawless, smile rehearsed. She said something about how happy she was I'd agreed to meet. I told her to follow me. We walked inside together. She thought this was reconciliation, but the air around us already felt heavier, like it remembered. When we entered the private screening room, the lights were low. A few silhouettes sat scattered across the seats behind us. She didn't seem to notice. Then the screen lit up. At first, she smiled, thinking it was a slideshow or video I made for her. But then she froze. The footage wasn't romantic. It was from the parking lot. The security camera angle. Her kiss. The bouquet. The text messages. The audio clip. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her voice cracked. The people in the seats began to whisper. And as the room filled with her own lies playing on a 50-foot screen, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finally entertained. The screen flickered to life with the timestamp. Friday, 8:14 p.m. The parking lot camera caught everything. The kiss, the way she looked up at Troy, the way he touched her. Every detail projected in cold light. The audience didn't move. Madeline stared at the screen as if it were a horror film, and she was realizing she was the monster. Her breath hitched. She whispered something I couldn't hear, a small please, maybe, as the video cut to her messages. Her voice echoed through the speakers, the same one she used to whisper, I love you. Now saying, you're better than him, Troy. He's so uptight. I can't breathe with him. She spun toward me, face pale, asking if this was a joke. I didn't answer. I sat there, still and calm, watching her crumble. The few people sitting in the rows behind us, co-workers, friends, the ones she'd told I was controlling, began to recognize her voice. Some gasped, others muttered, but no one moved to help her. Then the next clip rolled. A phone recording. Troy's voice. She thinks I'll leave my wife. Cute, right? Followed by his laugh. Then another woman's laugh, Madeline's. The sound of a cork popping, a toast, and her saying, he's just too safe. I need chaos sometimes. She covered her ears, shaking her head. The theater felt airless. The quiet wasn't comfortable. It was suffocating. When the lights finally came up, she was crying openly. I stood, letting the silence stretch. Then I looked toward the aisle. That's when Elena Sandler appeared. Her presence changed the temperature of the room. She walked in wearing black, calm, precise, holding a small box in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. The audience parted instinctively. Madeline's crying stopped when she saw her. Maybe she recognized her from social media, Troy's ex-wife, as he'd called her. Elena didn't say a word to me. She walked straight to the front of the room, stood in front of Madeline, and opened the box. Inside were Troy's wedding ring and a thumb drive. She placed the ring on the armrest beside Madeline. Then she looked at her with the quiet power of someone who'd already cried all her tears. You broke your engagement for a man who forgot his vows the same way he forgets hotel names, she said evenly. And you believed every word because it was convenient to. Madeline's lips trembled. I didn't know he was married. Elena's laugh was sharp. You knew. You just didn't care. Then she turned toward me. It's time. I nodded to the projectionist in the corner. The manager I'd bribed with an expensive bottle of whiskey and a week of free IT work. The next file began. A split-screen compilation. Photos of Troy with each woman he'd cheated with. Emails of team bonding weekends. Receipts from corporate cards. And his voice bragging to another executive. HR can't touch me. I'm untouchable. They all come back for more. Halfway through, the door swung open. Troy walked in. His expression shifted from confusion to fury as he saw the screen. What the hell is this? Elena didn't move. It's your highlight reel. He stormed down the aisle toward her, barking her name, calling it a setup. Then he spotted me, standing near the aisle, and his tone changed. So this is your doing? You pathetic. Before he could finish, two men from HR, seated behind him, stood up. One of them, a silver-haired man with an ID badge clipped to his blazer, said calmly, "We'll take it from here, Mr. Sandler." Troy froze. His jaw clenched. He looked at Elena, then at Madeline, realizing too late that the ground had shifted beneath him. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Everything he'd ever hidden was now on a 50-foot screen, witnessed by the people whose opinions actually mattered. His superiors, his wife, his mistress, and her entire circle. Madeline turned toward me again, whispering my name like she was reaching for the last air pocket in a sinking ship. But there was nothing to grab onto. I watched her realization spread, not just that she'd lost me, but that she'd lost the image she'd built around me. The manager shut the projector off. The lights stayed low. No one clapped. No one spoke. Just silence, thick and final. Elena walked up the aisle and stopped beside me. She handed me a flash drive. "For your peace of mind," she said quietly. "It's everything. HR, legal, all of it. He's done." Then she looked over her shoulder at Madeline. "I hope you understand what kind of man you traded for. You thought you were in control. You weren't even in the rotation." Madeline slumped in her chair, head in her hands. Makeup streaked down her face. Troy tried to grab her wrist on his way out, but she pulled away. His expression twisted into something between pity and contempt. He muttered, "You were never worth losing anything over." That single sentence crushed her more than anything else could have. When they both left, the room stayed silent. I turned to the small audience, the co-workers, the friends, the ones who'd whispered about me being too strict. They avoided my eyes. Guilt always looks down. I said only one thing. "You all know what kind of people you've been defending." Then I walked out. Elena followed me to the lobby. The night air was cold, and the glow of the neon lights spilled across the pavement like spilled paint. She lit a cigarette, handed me one without asking if I smoked. I didn't, but I took it anyway. She looked at me sideways. "You handled it better than I would have." I wasn't angry, I said. I was curious. She exhaled smoke, a faint smile on her lips. Curiosity's more dangerous than hate. It lasts longer. We stood there for a while, watching people leave the theater in awkward silence, unsure if they should make eye contact. A few muttered apologies. Others just hurried to their cars. Madeline didn't come out right away. She stayed inside for almost an hour, probably hoping I'd wait. But I didn't. I got into my car and drove away before the credits of her downfall even finished rolling. Halfway down the road, I saw headlights behind me, her car. She was following. At the next red light, I pulled over, got out, and walked to her window. She rolled it down, eyes red, mascara smeared like ash. "Please," she said. "You don't understand." I leaned closer. "I understand perfectly. You wanted him because he was exciting. You wanted me because I was safe. Now you have neither." She broke again, tears spilling faster, voice cracking as she said she'd do anything. I told her she already did everything, to herself. Then I handed her the flash drive Elena gave me. "This is everything. Your choice what to do with it. But understand this, there's no fixing what you did. There's only surviving it." I walked away before she could answer. The next morning, the clip from the screening had already leaked online. A coworker had secretly recorded part of it. The audio spread like wildfire across her company. HR meetings were scheduled. Emails circulated. The quiet revenge turned loud on its own. By noon, Troy Sandler's name was trending on LinkedIn for all the wrong reasons. By nightfall, his marriage, career, and reputation were dust. And as for Madeline, her silence was finally real. By Monday morning, the whole city seemed to know. I didn't need to spread the footage, someone else already had. A 2-minute clip from the theater leaked online, cropped and captioned, "Marketing director and her boss caught" in 4K. It hit every workplace group chat within hours. Madeline called 15 times before noon. I let it ring. The silence between those calls felt cleaner than anything we'd ever shared. Her family reached out next. First her sister, then her mother, and finally her father, whose voice carried the same cold authority that once intimidated me. He said I'd humiliated his daughter publicly. I told him to check her phone gallery before lecturing me about shame. Then I sent him the same private link I'd shown HR. He didn't call back. Troy vanished that week. Elena confirmed he'd been placed on administrative leave, which in corporate language meant fired but too embarrassed to admit it yet. She forwarded me a photo of the internal memo, his name crossed out, his access revoked, all for cause. Madeline's company suspended her indefinitely for involvement in conduct undermining professional ethics. The department she worked in was small, and gossip filled every gap faster than truth could catch up. By Friday, her desk was cleared. She texted me that she'd lost everything. I stared at the message for a full minute before deleting it without opening the preview window. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't even satisfied. The revenge had already outgrown me. It was alive now, self-feeding, spreading like fire through dry grass. I moved out of the apartment we'd shared. Most of the furniture was in my name anyway. She'd always insisted on saving for the honeymoon instead of splitting costs. I left her belongings boxed neatly by the door of the storage unit, labeled in my handwriting so she'd know I hadn't touched them. Precision mattered more than rage. Elena called one evening as I was locking the unit. Her tone had changed. The sharp edge of anger was gone. She sounded almost peaceful. They offered me a settlement, she said, and he agreed to sign the divorce papers. I wanted you to know. I congratulated her. She laughed softly. You sound more relieved than happy. I am, I said. Happy doesn't fit here. She paused. What will you do now? Start over? I told her. Not rebuild, start. When the call ended, I realized how strange it was that the person who understood me best now was the wife of the man who destroyed my engagement. Maybe pain recognizes its own language. 2 days later, I received a letter from the bank confirming closure of our joint account. Madeline had tried to withdraw the remainder, but I'd already moved everything. The email receipt made it official. Balance, 0. That same afternoon, a jewelry buyer met me at a cafe to appraise the engagement ring. He admired the cut, offered a fair price. I took it without hesitation and transferred the money to a small nonprofit Elena mentioned, one that funded legal aid for women harassed at work. I didn't tell her. She'd find out eventually. For a while, things quieted down. I returned to my routines: gym, office, silence. I'd stopped checking social media, but one day a coworker sent me a screenshot. Madeline had posted something vague. Healing is learning who you are without others' lies. The irony was too perfect to bother correcting. People like her always tried to rebrand their downfall as self-discovery. Weeks passed. One night, near midnight, I was driving home when my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the name signed at the end. It's me. Please don't block this one. I just need you to know I'm pregnant. I don't know who the father is. I'm scared. I stared at the screen until the traffic light behind me turned from red to green twice. There was no anger, no pity, just a tired sort of clarity. I typed one line back. Then talk to your lawyer's husband. I hit send and never saved the number. For the next month, she didn't contact me again. But news found its way to me regardless. A friend from her old company said she'd been trying to apply elsewhere, but no one wanted the risk. A scandal that public leaves a stain no resume polish can hide. As for Troy, his wife finalized the divorce, and his former clients blacklisted him. Rumors said he'd moved out of state, maybe trying to start some new consulting business under a different name. Predators never reform, they just migrate. Meanwhile, Elena started sending occasional texts, not romantic, not intrusive, just simple updates. Got the settlement check. The board implemented new policies. Then, eventually, thank you. I never answered those either. She didn't expect me to. Some victories are silent acknowledgments between survivors. Spring arrived quietly that year. The city warmed. Nights smelled less of asphalt and more of rain. I started jogging again, something I'd stopped when my life began orbiting around Madeline's schedule. It felt strange at first to move without explaining where I was going. One evening, on impulse, I drove past Regal cinemas. The neon sign still flickered, one bulb missing in the R. The same parking lot, same smell of popcorn and exhaust. Couples were laughing, arms around each other, heading toward news stories. I parked for a moment and watched them, wondering how many of them were telling small lies already, the kind that grow teeth when no one's looking. Then I saw her. Madeline. She was standing by the ticket booth, talking to someone, an older man, maybe a coworker or relative. She looked thinner, hair darker, face drawn. For a second, she noticed me through the windshield. Our eyes met. Neither of us moved. She didn't look angry anymore. Just tired. Maybe broken. She mouthed something I couldn't read, then turned away. I drove off without looking back. That night, I deleted every file connected to her. Texts, recordings, the flash drive copy, all of it. I didn't need them anymore. Revenge had already finished its work. Keeping the ashes wouldn't rebuild anything. Later, I opened my laptop to an email from the Regal manager. He thanked me again for helping expose corporate misconduct. I hadn't expected anything beyond closure, but attached was a proposal, an investment opportunity in a local startup theater chain integrating new screening technology. He said he remembered how composed I'd been that night and thought I'd make a good silent partner. I laughed quietly at the irony. The same place that destroyed everything was now offering me profit. I signed the paperwork a week later. Nothing dramatic, just numbers, signatures, transfers. But when it was done, I realized I'd effectively bought a share of the very theater where my engagement died. Poetic justice doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it just leaves you owning the scene of the crime. Months later, on the anniversary of that night, I went back once more. The lot was empty, rain starting to fall. The lights reflected on the wet asphalt like melted gold. I stood under the marquee until the drizzle soaked through my jacket, listening to the sound of distant laughter from inside. For the first time since everything happened, I didn't feel bitterness, just distance. The world had kept spinning without her, without him, without the noise. I realized that maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting her off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the theater of it all. I walked back to my car, started the engine, and pulled away as the last showing of the night began. The sign above the entrance flickered again, and for a second, it almost spelled my name. I smiled once, quietly, and let the city swallow the rest of the story.